Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt, and I have spent the week here with the Chevy Colorado. In the mid-size truck segment, this kind of kicked off the new generation of turbocharged 4-cylinders, if you don't count the Frontier, which it competes against. But it competes against things now like the Toyota Tacoma, which we just had a go in about 2 weeks ago. It competes against the new Ford Ranger, which we haven't had a chance to check out yet, but it also has a sister vehicle, the GMC Canyon. So today, we're going to cover the best and the rest of the Chevy Colorado. But before we dive in, let's cover what's new for this year. Well, for 2024, there's not a lot that's changed as this thing just debuted last year. But there is a new designation on top of your ZR2. You can now get the Bison package, which takes off-roading to an even more extreme. But this is the Z71, so let's talk about the pros and cons. The first thing to talk about is the safety suite, and this is kind of a little bit of a nitpick. It's a little bit more basic here than you would get in a Tacoma. You get standard front collision and emergency braking, which is cool. You get standard passive lane keep assist, which is also very cool. You do have an optional adaptive cruise, which works pretty well. It's really not bad, to be honest. It's just that the Tacoma will give you a little bit more. It'll give you more of an active lane tracing to keep you centered in your lane. Just keep your hand on the wheel and jiggle it a little bit. This just stops short of that. So it's overall pretty good, just not quite as good as in the Tacoma. And the only really other things to complain about are little tiny nitpicks. Like for one, you get leaf springs even in the back of your ZR2, where the others and their hardcore off-roaders will get a multi-link suspension back there. Now leaf springs are better for payload, etc., which we'll talk about later. But even with the leaf springs in back, I have found that this rides better than the Trail Hunter that we were in 2 weeks ago. Another thing to note behind the wheel is that full steering lock, there is a little bit of rubbing, it sounds like, from the front tires. You also don't get LED turn signals, which is, I mean, come on, it's 2024. And people will be fussy that your headlight controls are no longer over here, they're built into the screen, but you have auto high beams and auto headlights, so you're not going to need them a bunch, and you still have a high beam control here on your stalk. And the only other thing that's weird to me, and I'm going to nitpick, is the fact that this doesn't have any sort of ambient light. It's not really expected in a class like this, but it would be a nice thing. But that means there's a lot of nice things going on here with the Colorado, so let's talk about that. But then the driving experience in the Colorado here, it's pretty good. I like the engine, that's where everything starts. The 2.7 turbo 4-cylinder, everything in this class bar the Frontier, baselines as a 4-cylinder now with the turbo. And this one is one of my favorites that I could say. There's 3 different outputs that you can get. The max is about 310 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. And I've been getting like over 22 mpg this week. That, importantly, is better than the fuel economy that I got in the hybrid Tacoma Trail Hunter the other week. And it's also got way better range. It's got a bigger fuel tank than you're gonna get in the Tacoma 2. You've also got 4x4 as standard here on the Z71 and the Trail Boss and the ZR2, and you have 4 auto, which you're not gonna get on the Tacoma. But ultimately, the ride is pretty good. It's a little bit jittery. That would help with a little bit of weight in the back. I do hear the tailgate rattling a little bit over bumps, but I will say, even without the Multimatic ZR2 dampers, I like the way that this thing rides. And you've also got just about the best towing capacity in the class. It's 7,700 pounds maxed out for your Z71 here and your Trail Boss. If you go up to the ZR2 with the unique off-road suspension, that drops it down to about 6,000 pounds, but still, it's over 1,000 pounds max capacity higher than you're gonna get in the Toyota Tacoma, so that's definitely worth something. And your tech suite is really impressive, especially considering a lot of this stuff comes standard. Like your big digital instrument cluster, that's standard. It's got about 5 different views. And your big center screen, that's also standard. Wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, there's Google built in. You've got this vehicle status screen, which is super cool and gives you loads of information, and it works really well. Your off-road screen is also really impressive and comprehensive for something that's not even the ZR2 or the Trail Boss. You've got a Baja, terrain, and overland mode. You've got a wireless charger. You don't have 360 cameras on this one, but you can option up with more cameras to get things like the trail cameras and underbody cameras. We had those in the ZR2 and they were awesome. And when it comes to the tailgate and the bed, you've got a lot of impressive stuff going on here too. Your tailgate isn't going to be powered like it was in the Tacoma, but you do have this secret compartment here, which could function as a cooler or just some additional lockable storage. You've either got a 5 or 6 foot bed option, and your payload goes up to about 1,700 pounds in your work trucks with 2-wheel drive, which is bang on the Tacoma's max payload, but your ZR2 is going to drop your payload to about 1,280 pounds, which is still pretty good. But in your bed, you've got tie downs, lighting, and an outlet as a 120 volt. The Tacoma is going to bring things like that air compressor, but only in the Trail Hunter, which is like way, way, way more expensive than you get here. But here, as a truck with a bed to put stuff in, it works just fine. Another important place where this truck wins is the price battle. Colorado starts at $31,400 for a work truck with two-wheel drive. Importantly though, the Tacoma in base trim with two-wheel drive starts at over $3,000 more, $34,700. And the Ranger also starts at about $1,000 more, maybe $1,500 more. And that Ranger with, again, two-wheel drive starts at $32,700. So $31,400 here is a great value. Now that extrapolates as you go up the food chain a little bit. Now as tested, this is a Z71 package. It's $42K starting for that package, and then you add on things from there. But you get 4x4 as standard on a Z71. You get the huge digital instrument cluster, the head-up display, and not the head-up display, sorry, but the infotainment system. You get a lot of things as standard, and plus, it looks cool. And it's a lot cheaper than the rest, especially in Tacoma. And then when it comes to styling, I will say pretty much all of the trucks in this segment are pretty handsome now. But this one is no exception. It's also very good looking. The design language leans into strong geometric squared off lines for the body. You've got recovery hooks up front, and each trim gets its own unique grille, so you know exactly what you're looking at. If you know, you know. You've got LEDs, but not for your turn signals. And here on the Z71, you've got unique all-terrain tires and wheels, and you've got a nice handsome profile. You go around back to your bed and you can see the top of the box frame looks like mountains have been etched in. And you've got a built-in bed step into the bumper, which I like. It's also something you didn't get in the Tacoma, so there's some functionality built in here on top of the handsome style. And I want to talk about the cabin experience kind of as a whole here real quick. And there's pros and cons, I'll be honest with you. We'll start with the seats. The leatherette material that they're made of is not as nice as you would get in the Tacoma. I haven't been in the Ranger, but I don't remember it being as nice as even what you would get in the Frontier. But what you do get here is heated and cooled seats, which is super nice, especially not even having to go up to like the ZR2. You do get memory seats here. They're fairly comfortable, but again, it's just the leather quality itself. But the interior, the design, it feels more modern, and with the big standard screens and the nice graphics and the black levels and the Google built in and everything, it does feel modern, and it does feel pretty good. And you can get decent stuff in here. There's a little camo detailing everywhere to make it feel a little bit more unique. The dash and door cards are kind of nice. They've got this kind of a little bit scratchy material, but it's like a synthetic leather. It's gonna wear probably pretty well. But if you do go down to your Trail Boss, the dash is just gonna be like straight up scratchy plastic. So just be aware that that is a more budget-friendly option. But the rest of it, it's pretty good. I like it. It's got enough flair to it. It's got enough personality. Everything makes sense. Everything's pretty physical. It's easy to use, and I like it. And then when we start to talk about rear seats, it's a mid-sized truck, and yes, that means that you don't have a huge back seat, but I have noticeably more room than I did in the Tacoma 2 weeks ago. But when you look at the seats as something versatile, the rear seats don't open up, the bottoms fold up for a little bit more storage, and some trims don't really come with much back here. I do have map pockets, cup holders, and some vents back here with a USB-A and C, but I don't have a sunroof, although you can get it for another $1,000. And your rear window, no matter what and how much money you spend, is going to be manual. But overall, it's one of the better back seats in the segment. Now let's get this thing out on the road and go for a bit of a drive. Colorado. Turbo. Ooh. It sounds a bit like a turbo diesel, does it not? Okay, so there's something I should clear up, because as I was filming, I've realized that as I kept going, this video sounded more and more like a Tacoma hit piece, and that's really not what I was intending, but the Tacoma has been far and away the benchmark, the segment leader, and then this new generation of trucks started to come out. Toyota's new Tacoma just came out this year, this came out last year, there's a new Frontier, there's a new, everything is new, right? And so is the Tacoma still the benchmark? And that's kind of what I was going out and trying to discuss with this video. And I think in some of the small areas that I've indicated, it's not necessarily the benchmark anymore. This Colorado, especially for the money, has so much value. The engine is great. It's really solid. It's pretty efficient. Even more so than the Tacoma Hybrid. Now the Tacoma Hybrid's gonna get you a little bit more torque and blah, 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 but this has more towing capacity. It's got pretty similar payload capacity depending on spec. the technology is a little bit behind, but everywhere, and some of the interior materials, like, you know, some of that stuff isn't as nice as you'll get in the Tacoma, but it's not exactly like the Tacoma's a Rolls Royce on the inside either. So I think the point of this video is just kind of to illustrate, like, there's a lot to like about the GM platform here. The Colorado, the Canyon, they're good trucks. They're value-packed trucks. They feel modern, they feel well equipped. Get the cooled seat because this leather doesn't really breathe much. But other than that, like, I don't really have much to complain about. The ride is pretty good. Put a little bit of weight in the back, that'll help. But it's a good platform. It's a very good platform. It feels pretty good on the road. The steering is all right. The visibility is good. The ride is pretty decent. Even for having these all-terrain tires on, it's, I don't know, like, it's just pretty complete. So with that, I think we'll just head to the final thoughts. So that is the best and the rest of the Chevy Colorado. And I have to say, without having had a go in the new Ford Ranger, specifically the Raptor, I think this in ZR2 form is my favorite mid-size truck right now. It doesn't make a lot of compromises in terms of truck stuff, towing and payload. It looks pretty good. The ride is better than you would get in the Tacoma. The fuel economy is better than you would get in a hybrid Tacoma, which is insane. And you've got better range. It just does everything really pretty well. So there's a lot to love about the new Chevy Colorado, I guess new from last year. But thank you to you for watching, thank you to Chevy for letting us have a go, and we'll see you in the next one.